But first today, the latest figures have revealed that knife crime is at a record high with 40,000 offences reported last year.
To tackle this problem, the government is proposing a new ASBO-style plan, but whilst this idea is being supported by members of the Conservative Party, the opposition have suggested the new plan is pointless.
Well, to discuss the proposal and the government's take on the growing problem of tackling knife crime is the Home Secretary, Sajid. Javid, welcome to you this morning.
Good morning.
So just explain a little bit, because this was announced last week, that there was this new ASBO-style order that could jail children as young as 12. Just explain why you thought that was a good idea and what exactly it is.
Well, first, if I can say, as Home Secretary, my number one job is to do everything I can to keep the public safe.
Yes.
As a parent, I think about my own children. I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can that they can walk safely around the streets of the UK. And I've got to do everything I can, everything we can think of, based on expert advice, and this particular new measure that you mentioned was recommended by the police. It's got cross-party support. It is backed by the Mayor of London, for example.
Yeah.
And it is about just thinking about what more we can do.
And what power would it give the police, for example, then?
What this will do is it's a knife crime prevention order. And what it does is it allows police that where they come across people, particularly young people, that are hanging around, let's say, with the wrong sort of people that have already been convicted of carrying knives, using knives, and these young people are hanging around with them in gangs, it allows them to take preventative action. So to put a civil order in place that would prevent them, for example, from associating with those people, from going to certain areas, providing a curfew, sometimes even restricting access to social media and other things. And I'm not...
Is that policeable?
It's if the order is broken, then it will be a criminal offence. But the police will work with the courts. They can also, for example, the police can bring social action groups in and youth groups and stuff to try and help that individual. It's about preventing that person, which often can be a child. So it can be someone as young as 12, for example. Preventing them from actually being drawn into a life of crime in the first place. You know, it's a kind of thing that, if that child had very good parenting or had someone, an adult overlooking them that could be with them all day and sort of say, look, don't hang out with those people, it's what a good parent might do. But sometimes that is missing for some of our children.
But so in which case, aren't you just criminalising these young people who it would be much better to be looking at their family situation and spending the money on them as young people rather than criminalising 12-year-olds?
I think that you need to... So there's a space for both. So you absolutely need to do what you've just said, which is work with the families and their sort of social group. And, for example, the government also has a programme called the Troubled Families Programme, which does just that. And that's through local authorities. But sometimes I think there is a need for taking stronger action. And this is where... So the police came to us with this. We are constantly asking police and others who come into contact with young people, what are the best ideas out there? They came to us, and that's why I think it is worth taking
So why does John Apter, the chair of the Police Federation, say that the measures are merely tinkering around the edges of the problem?
Well, look, I listen to, whether it's John or others, he's a very important police officer, and I would listen to him and others.
But did he sit in your office and say, this is a good idea, this is just what we should be doing?
He didn't, but the Metropolitan Police did, other senior police officers, the Commissioner of the Met did. And what I would say to John and others is we've just introduced this as an amendment to a bill in Parliament. It is yet to be debated. There'll be debate and more information on it. And I would just say to John and others, please hear us out. But
how are you going to, as Holly pointed out, how are you going to police this? Because there are some of the critics have said exactly that. You've got Baroness Doreen Lawrence. She's saying that she wants young offenders to have who've been in jails to going to schools and explain the reality of custody. She wants the government to start educating children about what could happen if they carry knives. And then you've got the others who say, hang on a second, you've actually cut police since 2010, various governments have cut police numbers by 22,000. How are you going to possibly do this? And what it is just politicking. You can say this, but you can't make it work.
Look, I think, so let me please answer that the police came to us with this idea. Now, had we not taken it seriously and said, you know what, we think if this is just politicking or something, I'm sure I might be sitting here, you might be asking, why am I not listening to the police about what they think should be done. But also, I think where Baroness Lawrence is absolutely right in what you've just said there, is it's not just about this one piece of action. You need action on multiple fronts. I wish with knife crime, it is devastating what's happening in our communities, this senseless violence. I wish there was one single thing that you could do that would stop it, but there isn't. It requires action on many fronts, and a good example is educating young people through early intervention away from a life that leads to crime in the first place.
I remember ASBOs when the first time they came about and they were handed out, and it's funny enough because Marie says, I don't think ASBOs worked last time, so I don't think they could work this time either. Sal says, I remember people seeing ASBOs as a badge of honour, they just don't work. It seems like a similar sort of thing. Aren't we just falling down the same hole?
I think it's about having action on many fronts. Now, with ASBOs, for example, I could show you examples where people, including parents and other carers for children, would say they absolutely have worked. Right. I'm sure there are examples where they didn't work the way they were intended. But it does, I think, something as devastating as this, with knife crime is rising, and we've got to stop it, and it's about action on many fronts. It is also about, I think you mentioned about police resources. I think it's absolutely fair point.
More police on the streets?
We need more police. We absolutely need more police on the streets.
Is there money to do that?
Yes, just this week, in Parliament, we had the latest annual, what's called the annual police settlement. Yeah. It's almost £1 billion extra, the biggest increase in police funding since 2010. It will lead to thousands more police. So it is about action on many fronts. So I think Baroness Lawrence has some really good points, but we need to do all of this.
Just want to talk to you about the money, though, because every MP we've had who sat here, I have no doubt about their good intentions for whatever they happen to be. You don't get in politics to make life difficult for people. You all get in politics to make life easier for people. Nevertheless, it's very hard to understand and believe your figures sometimes. You say you're going to invest £220 million to steer young people away from a life of crime. That's amazing. That's fantastic. What a brilliant thing to hear. However, the Sunday Times reported at the weekend that you've secretly reduced funding for a scheme to help children escape knife crime. You said in July you were doubling the £11 million that was allocated to the Early Intervention Youth Fund to £22 million, part of the public health approach to combating knife crime. On a recent visit to the West Midlands, Policing Minister Nick Hurd announced that the funding had been reduced to £17 million. So actually, you say you're going to pay it, but you're actually not.
Well, I can say that story was completely incorrect, and in fact, I corrected it on the day. So not only have I not cut that funding, it is still £22 million. I'm not sure where that came from, but I added the extra 200 million, which says now it's £220 million. It's tenfold of what it was intended to be just a few months ago.
That's guaranteed.
That is guaranteed funding. And what's really important, what is it going to be used for? We're going to work with social groups that, for example, charities that former gang members that work with young people to exit them from gangs, to help them move away from a life in a gang. I went to see a charity called Divert in Brixton, where what they do is early intervention. So if the police have arrested a young person for, say, possession of a knife, and they're spending their first night in the police cell, they will introduce them to a mentor that evening and say, are you really sure you want to live like that? I saw a 15-year-old boy that had been helped by a mentor in this way, and now he has a life, you're working like everyone else. And that early intervention is critical because no one wants to criminalise young people. You've got to pull them away from life and crime.
Is part of the issue here that actually sort of gang life is slightly glamorised on social media? Is it not the responsibility of also the sort of web giants out there that need to not provide a platform where they glorify this kind of gang violence?
Yes, I think that is part of the problem as well. So when I was about action on many fronts, so that's social media and parts of it glamorising, there are some YouTube channels that are effectively run by gang members, where they flash around their money, they will even use...
But why can you not just get all that pulled? I mean, this has come up in the press over other stories that we've seen highlighted in the last couple of weeks also. Why is there not that control then? If we know that that is directly causing people to then go, right, well, that's a lifestyle, that's a cooler, let me go and get involved in that. Why can't we just instantly pull it? Why does it take so long?
Exactly, that's what anyone would think. Why is this allowed in the first place on YouTube or other social media platforms? So one thing we've already done is working with the Met. We've set up a new unit that is finding this kind of content and then approaching the tech companies directly. But of course, the better way is that the tech companies do something about it themselves. Yeah. Now, the example I would use is that I'm also responsible for protecting us from terrorism. And sadly, when we had those devastating terror attacks in 2017, so many people murdered, we went to the tech companies and said, enough is enough. There's too much illegal terrorist-linked content, and you need to do more about it. And they did. And it took them a while, but they have done much more. Now, why can't they use the same kind of technology and take it as seriously?
Well, there's a meeting today between Instagram boss Adam Mosseri and the Health Secretary, Matthew Hancock, which, of course, obviously, I'm not telling you this, I'm mentioning this because you all already know. And he's expected to say that, as you've just alluded to, should treat suicide and self-harm images with the same gravity as terrorist-related posts. So would you start to prosecute the web giants?
If we have to, I think we will. So what we are already working on across government, especially my department and the culture department, is what we call a white paper, which will set out government plans for the future on both illegal content, like terrorist content, also, if I can mention, the child sexual content, which is something I've personally started a mission on to do much more to stop that globally. There's far too much of it on the internet, and it's horrific what's happening. And I went to the West Coast, I met with the tech giants on that and terrorist content, and demanding they do more. One of them, for example, has developed a anti-grooming tool, Microsoft, which is fantastic, and they're making it available for free to all companies.
If you use the technology
but what you've just said there about having the same approach to, let's say, activity that is not illegal. So social media is not illegal. No one proposes that it ever should be. There's a lot of good that can come from that. But the harmful side of that, we do need to take action. And what I've said and what the government has said to these companies is that we're watching what you do now. So Instagram, for example, has made some announcement today. We're watching that. I don't think it's enough. I think what they've said today is by no means enough. And if they don't take action themselves, we will legislate. In fact, I'm certain we are going to legislate, and how far we go will depend on what they do.
All right.
We have to leave it there. Your brother is a chief superintendent, is he?
Yes, that's right.
Does he agree with you?
On what? Well, not always, but most of the time.
On these new proposals?
On these new proposals, yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
Thanks,
Good.